morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. There are strangers among us. I'm just kidding. We welcome our Kingdom City kiddos and volunteers here for worship with us this morning. We are going to celebrate our Move Up Sunday, which is when kids move up into their new classrooms. Secret's out. They've actually already moved up into their classrooms, so we're celebrating the end of summer, going back to school, and so we're going to send them with a blessing and just a bout of excitement. But that's later. First, we're going to sing together, and so I do invite you to stand as you're comfortably able, and we're going to worship together.
Rescued me, His grace was deep. And while I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Oh, yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for
Well, we're just so excited to have you here this morning. We celebrate again our Kingdom City moving into a new semester, a new school year, which is a big transition for them. And it all kicked off with Walkabout this summer, and we've been so excited to do that. I'm going to warn you that we are going to do the Walkabout song after this next song, so I didn't want to surprise you with it, but you are going to have to dance. So just like this next song, get a little loose. Prepare your minds. We're going to get excited. But I wanted to read before we did that really quickly the verse that's happening for August down in Kingdom City. And it is so, it's just how it works out, that what they're learning is what we're learning, what we sing about, what we know. And it says, it's from Ephesians 2, and it says, we are God's creation. He created us to belong to Christ Jesus. Now we can go do good works. Long ago, God prepared these works for us to do. And so I sang that first song to remind us who we are. We are God's kids. And then we're moving into this, singing the Walkabout song, knowing that God has prepared us for everything that's ahead. And so kids going back to school, teachers going back to school, parents entering into a new school year, new rhythms, new exciting things. God has already laid the path ahead of us. And so we celebrate just being able to go out into the world, communicate the love of God, and be ready, set, and then move out. And so we're excited to do that. But will you continue to worship with us?
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Sing holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you
get ready to move. I wanted to welcome up. I'm making it a thing. Welcome the Walkabout worship team, dance crew.
From the start, you're the one who knows my heart. You are there for me, Jesus. You are showing me the way, love and kindness every day. You are helping me, Jesus. So I'll follow you, here and there and everywhere. I know it's true, you're always by my side. I'm ready for the time of my life. I'm set on doing what you do. I'm gonna share your love with the world. Ready, set, move. Get ready, get set. Ready, set, move.
You've been with me from the start. You're the one who knows my heart. You are there for me, Jesus. You are showing me the way, love and kindness every day. You are helping me, Jesus.
So I'll follow you, here and there and everywhere. I know it's true, you're always by my side. I'm ready for the time of my life. I'm set on doing what you do. I'm gonna share your love with the world. Ready, set, move. Get set. Ready, set, move. I'll do what Jesus told me, believe what Jesus showed me, love 'cause Jesus loved me. We trust that He is with us, no, He will never leave us. Let's shout what He did for us.
I'm ready for the time of my life. I'm set on doing what you do. I'm gonna share your love with the world.
Ready, set, move. I'm ready for the time of my life. I'm set on doing what you do. I'm gonna share your love with the world.
Ready, set, move.
Do what Jesus told me.
I'll do whatever you want me to do. Ready, set, move.
You all, it's amazing how much the kids remember these dances. It is incredible. Thank you to our worship team. Really, thank you to all of our Walkabout volunteers. Also, you guys can take a seat. That was a lot of movement for 10 o'clock in the morning. Also, I wanted to say good morning. If this is your first time with us, welcome to our living room. I'm Christina Heckelman. I'm the ministry director here at Newsong, and more than likely you won't see me up here in the living room because I get the privilege and opportunity to be downstairs with our kids in Kingdom City, which is our kids ministry. And so, like Kelly was saying, we wrapped up summer. We have had the very best summer. Our kids have been going through this idea of seeing Jesus here, there, and everywhere, and what it means to have faith. And so I'm going to do something that's really, you never know what's going to happen. I'm going to ask one of our kiddos to come up here. Raise your hand if you know what faith is. Who can come up here and tell me? Lucy, come on up here and tell me what it is. We've been doing this all summer. Let's see. What is faith?
Trusting what you can't see because of what you can see.
Ah! There we go. Good job, Lucy. It's trusting in what you can't see because of what you can see. And our kids have been doing that. In August, this is something else we're celebrating today with Move Up Sunday. In August of 2022, we started a journey in Kingdom City through the Bible, from Genesis all the way to Revelation. And we finished up last week, where our kids have been hearing stories and seeing Jesus move throughout the Bible and what it means for him to always be with them, to always be for them, and that he is their friend forever, that they can trust in that no matter what. And so it has been an awesome opportunity to do that with our kids, and so they deserve to be celebrated. That's no easy feat. They did it. So with that, we're wrapping up this summer. We have one last very best summer event. It's going to be at the Splash Pad next Sunday, August 13th at 6 p.m. Please bring your kids, bring your family. This is for the whole Newsong family, not just our kiddos. They are just as equally a part of Newsong as all of us are, and so we want to celebrate and be able to play. It's important to remember that as adults, we need to play too. And so to be able to go to the Splash Pad, have some snacks, play, splash around, that'll start at 6 p.m. next Sunday at the Splash Pad. We really hope to see you there. And so the moment we've been waiting for, it is our tradition in Newsong to do a move up tunnel. And so what that looks like is that we're all gonna stand up here in a second. We are going to partner up and make like a human tunnel. You know how, Caleb and Kelly, will you show? Yes. So they're gonna start it for us. And our kids are gonna run through here. So we're all gonna partner up, make a tunnel, scream, hoot, holler for them. And so this tunnel is gonna go down this aisle right here where Shelly and Scott and Melissa and everybody is at. It's gonna go around this center section right here and then out these doors because we are going down to Kingdom City. Nick, there should be some background music for us. Yes, and kids, come on up here to the stage. Come find me right up here. Let's see if we can do this. I'll let you all know when we're ready. Is that everybody? All right, here is to our kids. May they have a wonderful school year. We have ready, set, moved. Here we go. On the count of 3, we're going through the tunnel. Blake, lead us through. Go ahead and go through, buddy. Catherine, you want to go with them? Woo!
Before you get seated, would you just take a second to turn to each other, greet each other this morning with a hug, high five, handshake. Welcome to those of you joining us online. We're really glad that you're here, and we feel your presence with us as we always do.
That's a lot of energy. Thank you so much for participating in that with us. What a wonderful thing to celebrate, having our kids continue to grow, both physically and spiritually. And we're grateful for you as part of our family to be a part of that. And I'm afraid that, sort of from this point on, the service is just going to go downhill in terms of energy. We are thrilled that you're with us today. If you're a Newsonger, we're always grateful to journey with you. If you're a guest with us today, as Kelly said, we hope that you feel comfortable in the space that we call our living room and excited about that. We start a new series today. And the series is entitled Sing to the Lord a New Song, and I'll explain why as we go along the way. The point of the series, essentially, I told my story a couple of weeks ago, just sort of my own journey of faith, so to speak, that led to sort of the beginning of Newsong 18 years ago this summer. And it was intended to lead into this series, the story, essentially, of Newsong in the way in terms of whether you've been here for a long time and this is sort of a refreshing of that, or whether you've been visiting with us a relatively short time. And we feel like it's important from time to time to revisit the basics of who we are, what we do, why we do what we do, how we've become who we're becoming, who we are becoming. And so the series is intended to do that, to talk a bit about essentially what this means, why we exist, what we believe, how that shapes who we're becoming. And so from time to time, we'll do a series and invite you along the way, if you've got questions, to submit those. And so this is a series that if you've got questions about anything that I'm saying along the way or that I don't address in terms of who we are and what we believe and why we exist in the coming weeks, then encourage you to write those down, drop them in the boxes around the room. You can go to our Newsong Fellowship app. There's a link on that very first page, a little box called Ask Dave. You can submit it there. You can send it to me in an email, dave@newsong-fellowship.com, and we'll wrap the series up when we're done with it, sort of with the time to sort of walk through those questions. Because I want you to have the opportunity, if you need to, if you want to dialogue about that, to understand who we are, and if you've got questions, then we value those. And so it's important to us. The idea of this Sing to the Lord a New Song isn't ours, it's in the Scriptures. Almost half a dozen times they're referred to in the Psalms, about 15 times throughout the Scriptures. In some way, in some wording or another, there's this encouragement, this admonition, this reminder that we can come to Christ, come to the Lord singing a new song, that there's value in that there's this priority, something about singing a new song. And so, just for the sake of beginning where it all begins, about this time 18 years ago, our family was in this decision of what do we do with this next stage of our life where God is moving us, what's going to happen next in terms of that. And we come to this idea, we feel like God is calling us to start a church. And so I remember we went out to eat at some point, and I had in my mind these verses in Psalms going over time and time again, sing to the Lord a new song. And up to that point in my life, my journey in terms of career was I'd been a worship leader. And so I get the joy and privilege of doing that here, a bit with a bit less focus, but the opportunity to use my gifts in that way. But this verse kept coming into my head. And so we're sitting, as a family sitting together, what shall we call this church if we're going to start a church? And so I threw out this idea of I think I'd like for us to call this Newsong Fellowship. And it just sort of rang for us. We felt like, oh, this is good. And so we kept it sort of to ourselves for a few days, praying about that. In the meantime, a few folks had contacted us about sort of what's going on in our lives and what's going to happen next. And so we had talked about, essentially, we hadn't communicated that at all. And so I got a call from a friend at one point in those days just around that time that was kind of asking that. And I said, here's what we're thinking about doing. Sorry, we feel like God's leading us to start a church. And so if people were asked, we'd tell them. And so I didn't say anything about the name. And so we had this conversation about what I envisioned that being and kind of how that would work. And so it was a great conversation. We finished the conversation. Later that night, while we're in the middle of this journey, this exciting journey of we feel like this is an exciting thing that God is doing, and yet I feel completely overwhelmed by the fact that I had that Moses feeling like, God, you got the wrong guy. I'm a worship leader, remember? And so the sense of anticipation of what God would do and this excitement that was coming along with it. And I got an email that night, and sort of the apprehension, too, on some level, like I'm really nervous about this thing. It was never in my mind that I would start a church, that I'd be senior pastor of a church. And so I have this excitement and yet this apprehension about that. And I got an email that very night after that conversation. And the email was talking to a friend of mine in, I think it was Colorado, telling her what you were telling me about sort of what's going on in your life. And my friend tells me she has a word from the Lord for you. So you got to understand, I grew up Baptist, and we just don't get words from the Lord. So I was very eager to hear this, because I believe it's possible. I trusted that because of just what we were already sensing God doing. And she goes, my friend said to tell you this, the Lord is the same, but he does new works. sing to the Lord a new song. And I just, like chills went all over my body. I called Shelly down. You got to see this email. You got to read this. There was this one of so many confirmations that God was in this. And our heart had said all along, God, if we know that it's you, the answer's already yes. So that's how this place came to be called Newsong. Part of that was my worship background, the belief that music is this universal language, that powerful words tied to music can work around the defenses of our mind and get to the heart to teach us, to reach us, to expand our capacity to grasp and give love. And so that just sort of cemented it for us. And so that's part of why the title for the series, it was to understand, what is this new song all about? For me, it was never about doing something new that nobody was doing. There was also the sense of I don't want to repeat what I've done. I want whatever this new song is going to be, whatever song that will be, God, as long as I know that you're directing it, we'll keep singing this song. And it will become what you want it to be, more than what I believe I have a vision for. I didn't have a vision for what that would be for at least the first 5 years. I remember about 3 years in, one of the elders saying, what's your vision for a new song? I'm like, I don't know. Which goes against all the leadership principles, right? For me, it was just God is singing this new song in me, through us, in us. And all I'm interested in is that song developing so that we can at some point decide, oh, this is the song he's singing. And it's been an incredible journey. So for me, that verse is a reminder that while God never changes, our relationship with him, and therefore then our faith, should be growing, should be breathing, evolving, going somewhere. That the invitation or the admonition to sing a new song isn't just because God enjoys our worship, which he does. When our hearts are devoted to him, when we're lifting our voices from this place of God, you are God and you alone, and we love you and we worship you, that it brings him joy. But that's not the only reason that we're admonished to do this. I've come to understand that we are works in progress, all of us, that experience along the way new stories, and that those stories need new songs that reflect the reality of our growth and what God is doing in us and changing us. What I didn't realize then, that I came to then understand a number of years later, was that with that simple phrase and this invitation, it was also an indicator of one of the most powerful means of human transformation. You see, as the scriptures invite us to sing a new song, the truth is, a song is simply a story set to music, and story is the most influential and universal means for shaping who we are and who we are becoming. And so I want to talk today about how story is central to how all of us process and navigate the world around us, and how it shapes all that we understand and come to believe about what matters most. That it's wired into our DNA, and that's for a reason, and it's significant. And so you'll hear us from time to time, if you've been around here, come back to this idea of story and the power of story, and over and over again, because it's part of Newsong's DNA to understand the weight and power and value of understanding what story is, how we are changed by that, and what the great story of God has to do with our own story. And so I want to share some of the basic truths about story as we open the series, so that you'll understand why this matters so much to us as a foundation and DNA and the DNA of who we are. And so here's the first basic truth about story from a guy named Robert McKee, who's one of apparently Hollywood's major story writers. This is the guy that many of Hollywood writers go to for courses and conferences on how to write story, how to write scripts. And he writes this: story is a sense-making device. It changes the moral compass in the human brain. One of the leading experts on story writing is telling us essentially that hardwired into our biology is the reality that story, something simple as story, is what defines for each of us what we value most what our convictions are about everything that matters to us, how we see and navigate and understand the world and find our way to move into it, how we shape and inform opinions as well as what we believe is right and wrong, good and evil. We take it in processes that navigate it by means of story. That's how God designed us. And I've never heard that before, but the more that I read, the more that I understand what story is and how it moves us, it's just true. And it's powerful. And so that's the first basic truth about the story. Another guy named James Bryan Smith wrote a book called The Good and Beautiful God, and he says this: we turn everything into a story in order to make sense of life. We dream in narrative, daydream in narrative, remember, anticipate, hope, despair, believe, doubt, plan, revise, criticize, construct, gossip, learn, hate, and love by narrative. In fact, we can't avoid it. We are storied creatures. Our stories help us navigate our world, to understand right and wrong, and to provide meaning. We are storied creatures. It goes deep into the heart of who we are, and as a result of that, how we see and move in the world and who we are becoming in the process. All of that happens through story. In fact, companies that understand this have the most effective marketing. So here's a video I showed a few years ago when I first began to discover this, that will give you some idea of what I'm talking about. This is from a company called Steve and Ken, and just wanted to spend a couple of minutes so you can see this and see what you think.
October 1944. U.S. Army Air Force Base, Spinazzola, Italy. Dear son, I hoped I would never write this to you. In a little less than an hour, I will be strapping myself into my old plane and pointing your nose westward. I've seen the orders. I think it'll be for the last time. And so suddenly I find my life stripped away, like the branches of an old black tree. All that matters is I write this to you. I know you won't remember me. Not really. I spent 3 days with you last year when you were 6 months old, and though you can't yet understand it, I loved you more then than you might imagine loving anybody right now. Now listen to me. This life, know that it is precious. You've got to grasp at every little whiff of it that passes by you. It won't be easy. It won't be certain. Not now. Not in your unimaginable future. Don't be surprised. No, embrace the stiff winds. the lonely heights. Remember your name. Never turn away from the right course because it's hard. Above all, love. Scrape out the bottom of your soul and love for all you're worth. And when you find her, risk everything. Die 1,000 deaths to get her. Don't look back. When you grow older than I will ever be, blow on the embers of that first heroic choice. You'll be warmed and sustained. Someday you have a son. Remember he's your greatest gift. Tell him these things. Make a man of him. Love him. Don't live to get money. Have a few things, but make them good things. Take care of them. Learn how they work. There's beauty in the smell of good machine, old leather. When you walk alone in the autumn, down roads at night with trees tossing in the sunset, know that I would give everything to walk with you and tell you their names. But I am there in the light through the branches, and I'm loving you where I see you. I must go now. All my love, forever and ever, Dad.
What a compelling story, right? I mean, just powerful. Here's this dad writes the letter to a son that he's pretty sure he'll never see again, and he gives him all this wisdom about, as a father would, to want him to grow up being the right kind of man, being a good man, following what is right, following his heart, pursuing and giving himself to love, doing right things. It's a wonderful deal. Do you have any idea what the commercial is about? The commercial is about this. From the beginning, you saw the bag, right? Like he drops it down. And so the idea is this, essentially the story is the kid values the bag because his dad gave it to him, and he keeps all these things that matter to him, that shape him and are shaping who he's becoming. And he has this bag everywhere he goes. How do you say it? Don't pursue things or money or whatever, but have a few things, good things. So the end goal of this commercial is to sell you that bag. Take a guess how much that bag costs. Anybody have an idea? A range? 400. I hear 400. Do I hear? How much? What did you say? 450, 800? Is that what you said? $2,000. All right, I'll tell you. That bag sold for $925, and they couldn't keep them in stock. They couldn't keep them in stock. By the way, Steve & Ken is a furniture company in LA that understands the power of story and sold out of $925 bags because we are shaped by story. Story is the way we make sense of the world. Story is the way that we find ourselves and wrestle with, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? And this is a powerful story for that on some level touches all of us and touched a lot of people in a $925 way, which I just found fascinating. And so let me explain real quickly what I mean when we talk about story. How does a story work? What is the impact of that? So I'll just go through this pretty quickly. Essentially, a story this is one of the models of, if you would look at sort of how stories are written, whether that's a book or a script, these are the primary kind of components. And it's how a story works. Whether you understand it or not, it's how we process the world around us. And these are the critical, if a story is going to work, if you're going to buy it, if you're going to invest in it, if you're going to believe it, be interested in it, it has to have these components in this order. The first component is it has to have a main character, right? The character that you're interested in, that shows up from very early on, if not the very beginning. But it's not just that a character shows up. This character, here's what's really important, this character has to want something. He has to want something. We have to know that there's something aching in this character. There's something that he's striving for. He wants to get the girl. He wants to defuse the bomb. He needs to get a job. He needs to find himself. He needs to have his life make meaning, whatever that is. The story, if the character isn't clear about what we want, we'll lose interest in a heartbeat. He has to want something, and it has to be important. He can't just want a new car. Because a new car is like, yeah, that's fun, but there's no conflict in that. So the second element comes in that's very important. Early on in the story, this is a character who wants something, but he has a problem. He has to overcome this problem in some way for the story to draw us in. If you're at a movie and within 15 minutes you don't get who the main character is or what their problem is, you will lose interest. We will lose interest. No matter how good it gets from that point on. If you buy and read a book, if you don't by the first few pages, maybe at most the first chapter, understand who the main character is and what it is they want and what's standing in their way of getting it, you will lose interest. It's the way we're wired. So there's a character who has a problem. This main character who wants something has a problem, and so he needs to meet a guy that's out of their capacity to solve it on their own. Otherwise, they would have done it. And so they need, essentially, a guide who understands their fear. And it can be somebody who comes along. It can be some insight they gain as they read something. It could be a movie they see. It could be sort of a conversation with a friend. But it's someone who understands where they are, understands the fear, the trepidation, and begins then to give them a plan. Here's the conflict you're having. Here's how you get through that. Here's how you're going to deal with this. So they give them a plan, and that plan then has to call them to action to say, so here's what needs to happen, and so you need to do this. If you want to get this thing, if you want to get the girl, if you want to defuse the bomb, if you want to rob the bank, whatever that is, then here's how you do it, and gives them a plan. It calls them to engage it. They have to do something, which results then in either one of two things, success or failure. And early in the story, we have to understand all that's happening. Even if you don't know, wouldn't have been able to tell me those components, you know by intuition, this is what's needed to keep me interested in. And I have to have some sense of what does success look like and what does failure look like. Success means he gets the girl, or he defuses the bomb, or he stops the train, whatever the story is. And failure is, she walks away, or she doesn't love him. Or the bomb blows up. We have to know what's at risk here, what's to gain, and what's at risk. So if we take that and apply it to the video we just saw, here's the bag. Let me try it again. Here we go. So here's the backstory. Here's a child, and he's alone, but can he be a good man? He wants, like most of us, if not all of us, somewhere in his core, he wants to be good. That's wired into our nature. Whether we follow that or not, that's wired into our nature. So here's this kid. He gets this letter from his dad, gets this all-important bag, gets the letter from dad that becomes the guide, have a few things but make them good things. It's part of the advice overall. And so he stores these. Keep me in your heart. Store my memories in this bag is what he's saying. And if you'll do that, then you'll result in either success, the Father is with you, you'll become the kind of man that I was, that I want you to be, or you'll fail. You'll be a wandering child of life without meaning. That's the point of that story, how it works. So maybe we'd say it this way. A story is simply this. A character that wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. If you can understand that about story, you'll understand this is essentially, you'll find that next time, maybe if you're wired like me anyway, next time you watch a movie or a TV show or pick up a book, you're going to be thinking about, okay, so what's the character, what's the conflict? This is simply, the impact of the stories that draw us in is simply this. There's a character, a main character that wants something and has to overcome some kind of conflict to get it. I mean, think about it. What's your favorite book or movie? It's going to be about a character or characters that want something and overcome conflict to get them. Almost every story is. Every story that matters to you is. So if a story is about a character that wants something and overcomes conflict to get it, here's the second basic truth. For that story, the most important question is this: what does the main character want? Well, we now know what the boy wanted. But this is a crucial question for every story. What does the main character want? Because what's really important about how we are wired is what we want most is what we'll pursue most. Jesus said it this way: where your treasure is, there your heart. And in New Testament language, heart is will. Where the thing that you value most is, there your will be too. You'll do whatever you can to get that. So what is it that we want is an incredibly powerful question, because we all want something. And that's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. Whether it's, I just want to eat, or I just want to have value. I'd like to have a job. I'd like to be loved. It's a truly powerful statement. The most compelling stories will always be tied to belonging, purpose, and significance, because we are hardwired to need those. To need those at a most basic level. This boy wants to become the kind of man his father was, and he needs apparently the right bag to do that. But here's why the question matters. Third basic truth is this: everybody wants to live a better story. We all do. And that's a good and necessary thing. We're wired to want to live the best story possible. And it will always be tied fundamentally to belonging and purpose and significance. So the question, what does the character want? What do we want? What do I want? Is a powerful question. And Jesus gets the value of this question. In at least two instances in the gospel, in Luke and in John, he comes across two different kinds of people. In John, it's these two disciples who are actually disciples of John, and John says, oh, look, there's the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And these two guys are like, what? That's the guy? Okay, so they leave John and go to Jesus. Start following him, and Jesus turns to them and says, what do you want? Which is essentially asking them, so if you're looking for me, if you're coming to follow me, do you understand what that's going to cost you? So I'm asking you, what do you want, so that you're thinking through, is this the choice you want to make? But their answer is, we know, where are you staying? Jesus, come and follow me. John records a passage where Jesus is walking and there's a blind man on the side of the road, and you've probably heard this story. So he's begging for food. He hears Jesus coming and asks him to get his attention. He tries to get Jesus' attention, and Jesus looks at him and says to the blind man, what do you want? Which, if I'd have been there with Jesus, I'd have been like, okay, Captain Obvious. It seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? He's blind. So why does Jesus ask the question? Because Jesus needs the man to reflect on, what do you really want? Do you want sight? Because if you get sight, your life changes. Which can be good, or if you really don't want that, if you're content with where you are, then I'm not going to give you that. What do you want? It's a very powerful, deep, insightful question. And here's why. What we want most will determine the kind of story we will choose to live. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all the rest falls into place. All of these things will be given to you. What do you really want? Because it will shape the story, your story, from that point on. A number of years ago, Shelley and I were in Chicago, which we like to get away to Chicago from time to time because it reminds us of where we grew up. And we were out somewhere, walked into some kind of expo deal, and there was this set of postcards on a wall, some story being told. So there was somebody apparently who had posted these postcards, who had left these postcards laying all around town. And so on the postcard, and it was already stamped, I believe, but that doesn't really matter, I guess. Doesn't matter. But the postcard said on it, "Tell me one thing you dream of doing before you die. Use this card as your canvas, and when you're finished, mail the card." So that this person then would gather these cards and sort of see, this is how people are seeing their stories, and they're telling me what they want most. It's another way of framing that. And so here's some of the cards that showed up. I want to forcibly kiss an ugly cop. So if you were a Chicago cop, you did not want somebody coming to forcibly kiss you because that meant you were ugly, I suppose. Here's another one. I would like to live on the moon, W. It was a pretty cool piece of artwork. He said use it as your canvas. So that's, I guess, worth pursuing. Here's another one. Before I pass, I wish to own a monkey with a good sense of humor. Not any monkey will do. This is what I want most before I die, to own a monkey with a sense of humor. This one cracked me up. Please stop leaving these cards all over the place. I have to clean this every day. I don't get paid enough to clean after you. Thank you. Artist's note on top right. But this was the only one I left near the opera house. Stop throwing these away. He writes to himself, I suppose. Here's a few more. I'm a female musician who has had some success recently. Everyone thinks my dreams are coming true, and they're half right. I want children too. I'm not sure I will get that part of my wish. It breaks my heart. I would like to apologize to my ex-wife about my infidelity and tell her that I did love her and then die in happiness. Whew, what a story. Before I die, I would like to get married in a big ceremony, to have all those who said I was a lesbian, too fat, too ugly, too smart, or too strange, to see me up there with a man I love saying our vows. To be that in love and that hopeful that this is a person I want to see every day for the rest of my life, through thick and thin. And there was more to it. Apparently, I lost that other side. And then there's this one. Before I die, I want to learn to love myself for who I am. Incredible art piece. What's the thing you want most? Because it's hardwired into you to want something. And the story you're living will either yield it or not. But it'll shape us. A guy by the name of Jim Lower wrote this book called The Power of Story, and he says this: story is everywhere in life. Perhaps your story is that you're responsible for the happiness and livelihoods of dozens of people around you, and you're the unappreciated hero. Maybe your story is that you must keep chasing even though you already seem to have plenty, maybe even too much. Because the point is to get more and more of it: money, prestige, power, control, attention. He goes on, maybe your story is that you and your children just can't connect. Or your story might be essentially a rejection of another story. For instance, you may denounce your restrictive religious upbringing, and everything you do is filtered through that rejection. Story is everywhere. And so here's the potential danger and drawback when it comes to this power of stories to shape our lives. Again, James Bryan Smith writes this: we are shaped by stories. In fact, our stories, once in place, determine much of our behavior without regard to their accuracy or helpfulness. Do you understand what he's saying? That there are stories that are driving us. Whether they're accurate or not, whether they're helpful or not, they are driving who we are becoming. Once these stories are stored in our minds, they stay there largely unchallenged until we die. And here is the main point. These narratives are running and often ruining our lives. Which is to say, again, we're all driven by, we function by, we move by, we live by, we're shaped by, we become the stories that are running our lives, even when we're not aware that they're doing it. And those stories are either going to be in line with reality, which we understand reality to be God and His kingdom, that God is the one who speaks and all things come into existence, and He has a design for that, and the way to find what Jesus calls this abundant life here and now, and line up your story with that, and you will find belonging, purpose, significance beyond your expectations. But if the stories are different, if they move away from that, it takes you somewhere else. We are all driven by stories. And I'm not talking simply about religion. It's not that. Or simply a faith, that is, I believe certain things. I'm talking about the entrusting of the exploration of what story is driving me and what stories will lead to a better story. Everybody wants to live a better story. It's just, what is it that I want? Is that what will lead to the better story? And it's this understanding that shapes for us as Newsong what we see, the way we see, understand, and interpret the great story of God, the Scriptures, the Bible. So I'd frame it this way. We believe the Bible is a collection of stories written by people who were inspired by the Spirit to tell the great story of God at work in human history. It is the authoritative narrative for understanding God's design for fulfilling humankind's deepest needs for belonging, purpose, and significance. So when we ask, what is the story of God? We are really asking, what does God want? And what does God have to overcome to get it? So next week, I want to address that question and discover what for me was a huge paradigm shift. So don't forget, if you've got questions today along the way, feel free to write those on a card, go to the app, email me those, dave@newsong-fellowship.com, and at some point, at the end of the series, we'll come back to those and explore some of what comes out of that. Would you pray with me? God, I'm so thankful that you are God and I am not. I'm so grateful that your story is the great story. Driven by, energized by, grounded in, always moving in love. And that there's a place and space for me and every other person who has a story they're pursuing. For those longing to find love, for those longing for recognition, to be seen, to belong, to find purpose, to have meaning. For those who just want a monkey who has a good sense of humor. That you love us, that you want us to find the best life possible, the life that endures all things. The life that come what may, come the storms, the house, the life, the story still stands. Help us to pursue that as we work through, wrestle with, what is it that we want most? In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If you came prepared to worship with us in giving, we have joy boxes around the walls online, and we do that every time we talk about the joy box. Gotcha. There it is. So, grace and peace. Hope to see you next Sunday as we continue in the series.